Welcome back to her shift. She was stuck. She shifted. The end. I am your host, Anna, PMDD survivor, Kit Kat enthusiast, coffee lover, one half of a lobster couple, northern mum to a couple of sprogs. There's a few more boxes to tick there. But yeah, I think that's a general summary of where I'm at. If you can see me today on YouTube, hi. Yes, I am rocking the 1940s housewife love. Well, it's the hair's not good. The hair's not doing good, but it's part of the journey. If you tuned in last week, you will know I have started rosemary oil treatment on my hair, which makes me look like a greasy rodent. But I have to say that while my hair isn't growing back yet, it has stopped shedding as much. So I'm hopeful. I'm definitely hopeful. Let me know about your own hair health journey. Anyway, today's episode, it's the question. It's trending right now, so AI tells me. And I'm not here to say facts. This is it. This is what I know everything because I've experienced it. Absolutely no. But I'm here to muse and to talk about it. And that is PMDD versus PMS. Does it even matter? Well, we're here to talk about it. And I have had a few things happen to me in the last week, which might suggest that it does matter. However, I'm pleased to report that the way I approached the last week is due to some massive shifts that I have made mentally. And I'm happy to share here. Interestingly as well, like the last week I did an episode on how to cope at this time of year, because you get so frazzled because the C word is coming up, and I just gave some hints and tips about how to stay calm and get things done, especially on your cycle, or if you're suffering with burnout. And I'm just going to put it out there. Last week's episode absolutely tanked. It is my least downloaded episode of all time. Any feedback would be appreciated. It might be down to the algorithm. It might be that I sounded absolute shit. It might be the fact that you've got no interest in what I had to say. I do not know. I'm just being honest. Anyway, today I'm prepped with a question. I'm here with a mug full of coffee and a little bit of collagen. I've also got... We're done. We're sorted. We're in this for the next half an hour. Stick with me. And I'm going to have to put my specs on to even see what I've attempted to write down. So I put PMS v PMDD, PMDD versus PMS. I'm cautiously approaching this because, not because I don't want to offend, not because I want to polarize, not anything like that, because do they have to be completely different? Can you not have both? Is there a definite line where PMS stops and PMDD starts? Does it even matter? Are labels relevant when it comes to PMDD? I went to the GP this week. If you've been with me some time, you'll know that obviously PMDD has been a big part of my life for a long time, and I always knew that perimenopause was not going to be fun. It was just kind of given that if you're a hormonal sort like myself, that perimenopause was going to be another fairly large obstacle to get through. And to be totally honest with you, it has hit me like a concrete wall. It is different, and in many ways it is equally as shit as PMDD. And in many ways it is worse. One of the main things that I am struggling with is that at least when I had a really regular cycle, certainly in my baby making days, I did have my follicular fire week. Yes, I had utterly shit hell, I wouldn't say weeks, but I did have downtime when I would be really, really good and I could get my shit together and I'd get things sorted. I would say that at least for the last 6 months, and it's probably been since the start of this year, I've just not had a better day. It is just constantly shit. Like the level of insomnia, I went to the GP because I said, like, it's either perimenopause or I've got early onset dementia, brain fog, my ability to multitask, everything, all my joints hurt, my skin itches, my knickers, those dry as sandpaper. I know, too much information, but it's just, everything. I've lost my vitality, I've lost my sparkle, my hair is shit. My skin's not bad, we'll take the positives. That might be the collagen, but just really, really fed up. Oh, and the absolute worst thing is my anxiety. It's like being a coiled spring all the time. And if you can see me on camera, I'm like this all the time. I'm not depressed, I'm just anxious. And it's a really common symptom of perimenopause and aggravated hormones, apparently. Anyway, so I go to the GP and I haven't got much, hope, because let's be honest. So I'm 44, I'm 45 at the start of the year. I'm not far off it. And typically it was a man of a certain age. And first of all, he asked me, I can see that you have PMDD. What is that? Now, in the past, I might have got a little bit stroppy. I might have even walked out. I might have said, well, you're only a man with a medical degree. I didn't. Because that's been said to me so many times. And if I got a quid for every time that's been said to me, what is PMDD? I could buy several gift cards of Roblox. Anyway, and I said, don't worry about it. I said, if it's not your field, it's a GP, it's something you're interested in, you're not going to know about it. But I said, it's a really interesting subject. And I said, if you've got women in your life, it might be worth researching. Anyway, he then said, well, we don't usually, get blood tests for people your age because, officially you don't go into perimenopause till at least 45. And, and you're like, just like, I said, so, come midnight on my birthday when I'm 45, then you'll do it. I actually said that. I said, look, it's well known actually that a lot of women go into perimenopause in their mid to late 30s. That's when everything starts to decline. I said also, if there's a history in the family, it's also worth looking at. And I said, if it's not perimenopause, I said, I'm in trouble. So I said, just humour me. Let me have some blood tests. So that's what we're doing. I'll let you know how it goes. But anyway, just to hear another man go, what is PMDD? That's why I started this podcast. It's why we're asking questions like, what is the difference between the two? So out of curiosity, because I do have my own thoughts on the two, and I do think they overlap a lot. I asked AI to have a look and see, what do you think the definition is? Now this is what AI is saying. It's not necessarily what I think. It's the idea that PMS is uncomfortable, but PMDD is life disrupting. It's saying that PMS might make you tearful. John Lewis said, can I just say, not popular opinion, it's not something I look forward to each year, the John Lewis ad. I've never been particularly moved. It's never made me cry. Is there anyone else out there who feels that way? And this year is like no different. I'm like, Anyway, so PMS might make you tearful, John Lewis ad. PMDD makes you question your entire existence, your relationships, your job, your worth, your past, your future, and why the hell, your body hates you, why have I been born like this, etc. It then puts PMS affects your mood. So PMDD hijacks your brain, whereas PMS is predictable. Irritability, bloating, headaches. PMDD, intrusive thoughts, severe anxiety, rage, hopelessness, panic, emotional dysregulation, dissociation, I don't recognise myself syndrome, and sometimes suicidal ideation. Okay. It talks about it's not just feeling low. PMDD is a neurobiological sensitivity to hormonal fluctuations. Yes, we do get that battered around quite a bit. Now I've got some stats. Again, this is just what AI is saying to me. It's not necessarily what I believe. It says PMS is common. It says PMS affects up to 75% of women, or I guess anyone that has a cycle. PMDD says between 3 and 8%. Yeah. And then, of course, it goes into the whole idea that many women from a trauma background who've got CPTSD, of emotional neglect, narcissistic abuse backgrounds, neurodiverse, are much more higher risk of developing PMDD, it says. Now, I know, and I've said in the past that there was a point where I wondered if I was neurodiverse, because a lot of my behaviours and symptoms seem to match up, particularly with ADHD. However, I did do all the tests and I did speak to someone about it. And as it happens, I'm ridiculously neurotypical. I am beige AF, it seems. But a lot of the symptoms that were showing up that was similar to ADHD, and obviously not all of them, was simply because trauma does affect the brain in that way. So the effects of trauma can show up as symptoms of ADHD. And then, of course, you might have ADHD and be neurodiverse and have trauma. So the two do blur into a lot. Now, I'm going to argue that stats are stats. We never know for sure. It's just taking a handful of data and it's really just throwing it at a wall, isn't it, until something sticks. I did question when I was doing this podcast that maybe anyone who has a period, anyone who has a cycle, maybe they do have PMS. Maybe changes in your cycle throughout the month. So as we know, with cyclical living, men are on a 24-hour cycle, women are on a 28-day cycle, usually, not always. And there are changes within that cycle. Changes to the sensitivity of our brain, changes in our hormones, changes in our behaviour, changes in our ability to do things or not. And even if I think that you are fairly flatlined, as in your hormones are pretty stable and your mood is pretty stable and you show a very secure demeanour, if you have a cycle, there will be changes in that cycle. And perhaps we could call that PMS. So, for example, craving carbs and salty food and feeling knackered, the week before your period. Okay, it's not going to be debilitating. It's not going to take over your life. It's not going to stop you going to work. But could that be called PMS? Even if you're not in pain, just the changes in the fact that you're craving something or you've got a lower energy level, even maybe just having a lower energy level, could that be PMS? Is it possible that everyone who experiences PMDD also has PMS some days? Is it possible that anyone who's experienced PMS, i.e. anyone who has a cycle, has at times experienced PMDD? I'm just challenging these stats because, again, 3 to 8% of people, they reckon, have PMDD. Now, that seems very low. And again, it just makes me think that while it can be helpful to sort of have an idea, I don't think PMDD is rare. I just think that it's unknown. I don't think there's a lot of knowledge, but certainly in particular cultures or certain parts of the world. I do think it's something that women in general, we put up with. And you'll get someone who has suffered PMDD their entire life, but didn't know. They thought they were just like myself, thought I couldn't cope and I was weird. And, I never attributed it to my cycle. So there could be a lot of people suffering in silence. Could a lot of people who go through it, who never get medical help, who never get support, who never go to a doctor. And there could be a lot of misdiagnosis going on. And I also know there's so many women who have been going to the doctors for absolute years, have gotten nowhere, and they just give up. They just give up. So, yeah, I would argue PMS is common. I don't know, PMD is rare. I don't know. Makes me question that. PMS is uncomfortable. PMDD equals functional impairment. PMS can make you cancel your plans. PMDD might make you unable to work, parent, think, or function. It can wreck relationships, career progress, confidence, routines, and for many women, their sense of identity. Again, I'm not saying no. I mean, that sounds, yeah, that would make sense. But as much as, I talk about PMDD, I'm also careful that I don't want to play down PMS because it is a card that we've been dealt. And that we're on a cycle and some days are better than others, and we obviously have our follicular phase and we have our ovulation and then we have luteal. And I think, I'm beginning to think that anyone who has that probably does have PMS. I mean, if you have a slight bloat to your tummy, is that not PMS? I also are becoming more aware that anyone who is impacted in their life by a hormonal condition, whatever that might be, is going to perhaps have trauma from that. I think something that I wasn't expecting and wasn't aware of, that while I was able to control and manage and really, take PMDD, I'm going to say by the jugular, go, I am not having this. And I did so much, to work through it, to educate myself and others, and, to get the message out there. It really surprised me how affected I was by the worst times of my PMDD. It left a lasting impact. And I had to, and I still do, spend a long time unpacking parts of my life that from that time that could have been affected by PMDD, or maybe PMDD saved me. I don't know. In terms of relationships, for example, because there was a time I was thinking, did PMDD signal the end of my marriage? Absolutely not. I was married to someone with the emotional intelligence of a spoon. So that was nothing to do with PMDD. It was more of a case of actually nothing related whatsoever. However, the relationship was, made worse and probably came to its natural conclusion sooner due to the PMDD. But I know there will be people out there who are going, if I hadn't have had PMDD, where would I be with my career? What would have happened to that relationship, etc., etc. I think I'm going to say that is I am a massive believer in, the universe. Everything happens for a reason, and sometimes fate can be brutal, like ridiculously brutal. And there are times when I've looked up at the sky and can you just go a little bit gentler on me? I didn't need to be smacked into reality so hard. And I would add to that while it's important that we work through our trauma that has been caused by PMDD, it's also important really not to blame it, because you are blaming part of yourself and you are blaming your body and you're blaming something that's not your fault. These things happened. We can't go back, but we can move forward. Oh, I'm getting all philosophical. Now, this one is a bit weird. It says PMS gets better with rest. PMDD comes in like a wrecking ball regardless. You can sleep off PMS. You cannot sleep off PMDD. I don't know. I think both are pretty shit, and you can't bank sleep, can you? It says when PMDD hits, your whole nervous system goes dysregulated. Cortisol spikes, adrenaline behaviours, freeze, shut down, emotional flashbacks. It's hormonal and psychological and neurological. I'm just keen, while I'm working through these AI responses, to in no way minimise PMS, because again, like, it is a card that we've been dealt as women, and I don't like that. I hate the whole, well, I'm so much worse than you, I've been through so much worse than you, my hormonal condition is worse than yours. I don't like that. Okay, so PMS feels like me but touchier. So it says PMDD feels like someone else possessing me. Women with PMDD often report, I don't feel real. Yep. I feel like a different person. I can't trust myself. God, yeah. Everything becomes catastrophic. Oh, God, yeah. The way we spiral. My thoughts feel louder. And then it's put at the bottom, that's not PMS. That's the brain reacting to hormonal triggers like their threats. See, I think with this one, I think it's a case of like the two blurring a bit, because definitely with PMS, definitely in luteal, you are more emotional, you are more sensitive, you might be more likely to cry, like say in an advert. You might be more clumsy, you might be more likely to make a mistake, you might be more quick to react, to lose it, have less patience, for example. And I think maybe it's just saying that PMDD is like that times 10. But again, I don't think there's a cut-off between the two. I think they really do merge. I also think as well that when I had PMDD, some weeks of my luteal, or some days, might be more PMS than PMDD, because definitely some months were, better than others, which is due to a number of factors. It does make me feel, when it says about, the level of control, I can't trust myself, it's like, your brain isn't you, it's taking over. And I'll tell you about what happened at the last PMDD hub meetup. So it was in a really nice little cozy cafe, and there were partners and friends of people that suffer PMDD too. And one thing that was talked about was, to what extent does PMDD even become, is it diminished responsibility, an excuse? It's something that made me very uncomfortable. And when something makes me uncomfortable, I want to know why. I don't want to go, oh, okay, step out of that. Okay, let it go. I want to explore it. I want to know why. And I have an opinion on this, and I will let you know. I'm going to tell you what it is. I believe that what is in you, who you are as a person, your values, who you are on a soul level, doesn't go away. I think it sometimes gets put behind a door when you are suffering, particularly in a very dysphoric Hell Week. I think that you will have less empathy. I think you will have frayed patience. I think you will be more reactive. I think you will be confused. I think it's possible to gaslight yourself. I think it's definitely possible to lose control. And I remember I was speaking to a male gynecologist once who was, and this was in my early days of treatment for PMDD. And you know what I'm talking about, the sort of age of that man, dinosaur, coasting towards retirement. Absolute god in his gynecology field, but didn't actually know that much. However, he did say that he'd been called to a court case once due to there'd been domestic abuse in a household where a woman had used a knife on her partner during an argument, and he was very, very badly injured. Her partner was male, and his reason to go to court was to basically stand up for that woman and say that she didn't know what she was doing. It's like diminished responsibility, that the hormonal levels were so bad, and she'd argue that she didn't even remember doing it. It was that level. Now I can kind of get my head around that. There were certain times when I've struggled where I've never felt the need, I don't think, to do that, but I felt real distaste and real vitriol for people. I felt very angry. I felt a real negative energy towards life and people at times. And there might have been times when I would have maybe said things that weren't like me. It's not the sort of thing I would say. Or I like to think in general I'm quite a calm, collected person. And my patience is tested at times, but I would never snap like that. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't have that level of knee-jerk reaction. So while I get that, I do get that. But what was brought up at this meeting was, and I've seen it on the Facebook forums too, and it's the question. So I'm scouting around this because it's very raw. Is it possible to have PMDD and be a CUNT in general? As in, are you just not a nice person in general? Do you have dark energy? Do you have hate in your heart? And you have PMDD? Because what had shocked me last week, and I've seen it in the forums and some of the stories I've heard recently, is the level of cruelty displayed by some people to others that they then blame. And I think that's the word, actually, blame. They attribute to a hormonal condition. I'm not saying argumentative, even aggressive, lose patience, be snappy, but I'm talking proper, metaphorically sticking the knife in by the cruelest things they will say. And I'm not just saying the odd name, like the odd name calling or something like that. I'm talking real depraved cruelty with their words. And having, spoken to people, the partners of the loved ones of that while they can say, do you know what, it's not who they are, it's not them, it's this hormonal condition, it's PMDD, it was Hell Week, it was this, there's no way that level of cruelty, and I can't repeat what was said, but I've seen it on some of the forums sometimes, and actually I've seen these people very swiftly removed, because what they seem to do is, instead of the community growing together, these people that claim to have PMDD are attacking other people with PMDD and basically telling them that they're making it up. They're trolling people with PMDD are trolling people with PMDD and blaming the PMDD. And I'm not okay with it. And it was put to me that, that's how bad it can be. But it really does make me question. I think there has to be a level of, I would want to know what that person is like at their best. Because to think that way and to show that level of hatred, because that's what it was. And we're talking, the level of trolling that is on some social media that takes sometimes people to take their own lives. That level, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And I don't think PMDD is an excuse for that. That is my opinion. I'm not saying you've not called your partner or someone names. I don't mean you've had the odd bitchy comment. I don't mean you've been really aggressive, shouting, meltdowns, all of that. It's not that. I'm talking to the level of trolling that, like I say, causes people to take their own lives, and like bullying, like repetitive and constant. And I think that while PMDD has shown up alongside that, and it's unfortunate, it can't just be PMDD. And it was, the funny thing was actually that in these groups, people were very attacking of these people, so the PMDD people who were trolling others, they were kicked out of the group and they were like, that is awful, and they were like standing up for each other. It was lovely. There was the odd person though that was showing kindness, and they were saying, this person is clearly very, very troubled, like very troubled, and they need help more than anyone. And can we not show a bit of kindness towards the PMDD troll? And I think, yeah, wow, what a level of grace and empathy that person is showing. And I was taken aback, and I was like, wow, that is some good energy to put into a very toxic situation. So let me know what you think about that, whether there is like a line that crosses where it's actually not PMDD and it's actually somebody who let's be honest, could be psychotic, could be a psychopath, they could be a narcissist, and they could have PMDD. It could just not be a very nice person in general, and even having all the treatment in the world for PMDD is not going to change that. Let me know what you think there, because that's a talking point, isn't it? Okay, so it summarizes it up on the AI, and it says PMS is discomfort, PMDD is dysregulation, PMS is hormonal, PMDD is hormonal plus nervous system trauma sensitivity. PMS is annoying, PMDD is life-altering. There are parts of this analysis that I do agree with and can relate to. But as I said before, I'm very keen not to minimise anybody's struggles, hormonal conditions, how they show up. I'm always sent messages by the community and by you lot, where you always think that there's someone who's a lot worse off than you, and that you've got no right to be unhappy or to ask for help or to complain. And I think, God, that is so symptomatic of PMDD. And it's almost like you feel like you're entitled if you complain. Please don't. Everyone, if I could just create more visibility for everyone in this space to feel seen, God, we'd be doing so much better. So how do I sum up this episode of PMS versus PMDD? I think I'd like to say that, first of all, we do not know everything about this. It's clear to see that. If I'm still going to the GP in 2025 and he's saying to me, what is PMDD? Then making this distinction is quite hard. I think it's possible to have both. I think it's possible that both overlap. I think it's possible to go between the two. I think it's possible that anyone who has a cycle has PMS, possibly. I think it's possible that someone who has PMDD maybe doesn't have it all the time, and someone might have it all the time. I think there are examples of when you are more susceptible to elevating PMS to PMDD. I'm sure there is a lot to do with how the brain works that never mind, I don't understand, but the so-called experts don't understand. I am fascinated by the link with neurodiversity, but also the effects of trauma, PMDD. That is really important. Of course, that brings up the whole old age question, is that, you can have two people, very similar backgrounds, both experiencing a not particularly nice experience, probably a high level of trauma, some type of abuse, and yet one can manage, one can even thrive, one copes with it better, manages it better, while the other person simply cannot, and they go down a downward spiral. So, and we don't know the reasons why. Do we need to know the reasons why? Do we need to get that PMDD diagnosis to feel valid? Do we need to know that we have more than PMS? Does it actually matter? If it infects us in any way, if it affects our life, if it affects our career, our relationships, who we are as a person on a soul level, then to me, it's valid. It doesn't matter if it's PMS or PMDD or another hormonal condition. I'm definitely in an era of I don't like labels, I've decided. I'm going through some stuff with my son at the minute, and his mental health has really suffered this year, and it's been insinuated that he would really benefit from diagnosis to do with autism and ADHD. And while I do think that's important, I just don't think it's who he is as a person. Like, I don't think it matters to him as a person, his identity. It doesn't change how I look at him, how much I love him. So yeah, I'm not a label person. That must be what it is. So I hope that's brought some talking points. And I'm sure that I'm going to pass the floor to you all now and go, what are your thoughts on this? What do you think about the PMS versus PMDD debate? I'm sure there'll be lots and lots of opinions, which are all good, because the more that we can explore this, we can grow this community. We are looking at future PMDD hub support meetups. The reason that we started in the Northeast is simply because I'm from the Northeast. If they prove to be beneficial, then of course I would love to roll them out throughout the UK. The only problem I can see, not the only problem, is that for someone to be interested in this field, so PMDD, they probably have had to experience it. If we've experienced it or are going through it, sometimes we're not going to be in the best place to host a meeting. Let's say we are susceptible to that type of energy. And I think that finding consistency and commitment in this space might be something that poses a problem in the future. Tell me I'm wrong. I really hope I am, but that would be my only concern. So for that reason, that while I think in-person meetups are great, I can see this going more virtual perhaps in the future. Let me know what you think. It's my goal, purely with Her Shift at the moment, to grow this podcast. I'm not about churning out my freebies, my downloads, my PDFs, courses, anything like that. I just want to grow this podcast. I'm immensely proud of it. I've consistently shown up for 2 years now It's been hard, but it's become part of who I am, and it's, well, I believe, one of the ways that we can grow this space, this community, and educate people around us so the next generation doesn't have to put up with the shit that we have. Would you do me a favour? I would absolutely love it if you would share this episode and my podcast with anyone who you think would benefit. It doesn't have to be the female of the species. Everyone needs to know about this stuff. I really do believe that. All you have to do is give me a 5-star review. If you're not going to give me a 5-star review, just tell me why and just don't do it. But I would love it if you rated, reviewed, subscribed, passed it on to anyone who you think would benefit. And that's all I want to do right now, is grow the Her Shift podcast. Thank you so much. So until next time, I'm just going to say it. You are doing so well. Please keep going. You are stronger than you think. You really are doing so well. And as always, sending all my love.